Awesome. So, welcome to another episode of Happy Naked. So, bringing all taboo topics to light with real and raw conversations. And today I have a very, very special guest that I know you're going to enjoy. So, today, please with me on Instagram and Facebook under D Maxwell Happy Naked, and also on Facebook under Naked Fit 100% Health and Fitness. So just go check, follow me, do all these wonderful things to follow me and know what I'm up to, and also what are all the people that I bring to interview in these shows. And there is an upcoming webinar that it's all about lifting and elevating your energy. So you can check it out and you can register as well. So today we're going to talk about something that is very, very interesting, which is about tribe and individuality, right? And my guest will get into this, you will see. So in the recent years, what I noticed is that individuality has been viewed as selfish, right? And in our society, sometimes it's also seen like a normal thing. So it is very polarized, right? It's whether you've seen as an individual, selfish person that do not care about your neighbor or your family or your cousins or your mom or your dad, or it's like a normal thing. It's like, that's perfect. So on the other side, in many parts of the world, even today, right, they're still living the tribal lifestyle, right? It's still alive. And us, that we're supposed to be in places that are more advanced and progressive, not so much. So that is very interesting. And we're going to talk more about that. So, but where is the balance? Where is the true way of living, right? Is it being in tribe, in a community, or more individual, right? More like, I would say, let's call it selfish, right? Like you don't care about others or stuff like that, that it's being seen like that in many ways. So, but I will share where I come from, and I will share about me a little bit and how I can, the things that I have learned through the years. And as you already might know, I'm from Venezuela, and I'm also an immigrant in Canada. And one of the cultural shock that I experienced back 20 years ago, it was the lack of community, family, and support. That is the one thing that really, really shocked me in this culture. I also lived in the States, and I also noticed that. So in that concept, it is, you don't see that interdependency, which is basically, and we'll talk about that more, but that's a shocking for me. And so here I am, like people telling me that they move out of their house when they're 18 years old or even sooner. They go to university normally in a whole different town than where you grew up or where your family is. And through that, it comes normal struggles, right, of the society, right? Like how to, make a living, or how to pay for your food, or figure out how to pay for the university, which you end up most likely asking for money to the bank, right? And at the end of university or your career, right, or your studies, you end up with a massive debt, like a mortgage. And that's how we all are starting our life here. Not me, but that's how normally is, right? So, which now, if we look at it, debt is a new slavery. But we're not going to talk about that today.
We might.
Exactly. Aside from that, right? Let's give you my example. Okay, so how I grew up, and many people from my culture had the same experience. So I stayed in my grandmom's house until the age of 22. I went to university, and all my studies were paid by my mom. So by the time that I graduated from university, basically I'm zero, like no debt. I'm literally starting from scratch, brand new slate. This is my life. Now I'm able to build it and do something that is going to help me, because my mom invested basically on my education, and that is very, very common. So after that, I started doing my IT job, which was paying very, very well, and I was still living at my grandmom's house. So in my grandmom's house, it was my grandma, my mom, my sister, my grandmom, my great grandmom, and I. So that's what we're looking at. And I'm not even counting that at some point in my life, it was 11 people living in the same house, in my grandmom's house. So my grandmom started changing and adjusting the bedrooms and what to do here, how to accommodate all of us. And one of them, it was the caregiver of my great grandmom, and she was staying with us. So the reality of that is I was never alone. There was always somebody in my house. Even when my grandma went for holidays, because my grandma was the one raising me and my sister. Even when my grandma was going on holidays, I would even stay with my great grandmom, or my uncle was at home, or my mom was at home. Like there was always somebody. So I never experienced seriously time alone until I divorced. When I divorced, I move out. So I gotta share that even after I move out of Venezuela, I was still living with people, roommates. You know, I end up being with became my husband, right? At that point. So I was always with people until 8 years ago, and I'm 43 right now. So imagine. So it was very shocking, and it was very, very, very depressing for me to be alone, and it took me a very, very long time to adjust to that. So these are the things that I want you guys to start thinking about. And these are things that we are going to talk with my guest that I want to introduce you. And he is a meditation teacher. And as part of his life resume, he lived like a monk for 3.5 years and have done Vipassanas. And also while doing all this stuff, he was nomad and coach surfing here and there. So Stan Maxwell helps people using meditation and integrating those teachings into their way of living, how they are living their life. So welcome, Stan. I'm gonna bring you to the screen right now. So thank you for saying hell yes to this.
Yeah, I don't know if it was a hell yes, but yeah, I'm here. This is my very first sort of public appearance, so I'll do my best. A little bit of stage fright.
You know what? It is an honor, and I really appreciate that Matthew Ryder was the one that made the introduction, and he said, "Why don't you bring Stan to the show?" Because we already have seen each other, a few times before. So having this interaction is really, really good, because I know personally that you have a lot to share.
Yes.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit. First of all, tell us where you are right now.
I'm living now in Fort Saskatchewan.
So that's in Saskatchewan?
No, it's confusing. Alberta, yeah.
Alberta.
It's just right next, it's just northeast of Edmonton.
Oh, okay. So we're still in Alberta. I'm in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. Giving some geography lessons here. And okay, that's perfect. So tell me how was your part of our conversation that we have in the past? It's about how you feel about being alone and how well it works for you. So you were also living like a monk for 3.5 years, which I'm not even sure what that means, but explain us, how was it?
Yeah, I've always been what you would call the lone wolf, or the person on the outside viewing other people, not necessarily being involved in things. And that just came from my childhood, because it was a restricted childhood. So as I progressed into life, I just found it easier to be alone most of the time. One of the things that happens when a person journeys into a monk way of living is being alone and being in silence. Those two things are just the best thing ever. And as we learn as the animal that we are to be alone and to be in silence, we start to tune into our naturalness and that nature of us as an animal in nature, which is what we are, starts to become more dominant. Then once the animal learns this about itself, because we're a unique animal, we know that we are, whereas other animals don't know that they are, but they definitely are what they are. We're a confused species because most people don't know what they are. Whatever's been programmed in is what they believe they are. So they're kind of stuck with a really diseased way of living. So they're not at ease with themselves because they've been pulled out of nature and they've been taught that's what they are. So once a person becomes good with that, their natural state of being, so we don't have to go into this enlightened, awakened, ascended, all those kind of fanciful words about it. It really is just tuning in with nature and becoming a part of it rather than being separate from it. And this is sort of what happens when we break away from traditional lifestyles from places like where you grew up, is that we get into the idea of separation. And I used to call it Western life, but now I'm starting to call it modern living, because that Western influence has infiltrated all around the world now. So even traditional cultures, the kids are growing up and moving to the big city, and they're not staying home and living this extended family thing anymore. And so what happens is separation, and there's all kinds of different forms of separation that go on in modern society. So the nature of what I like, I've termed this idea, I call it the ideal ancient village. And I use that as my authority to speak of these things that are most likely natural to us, right? So through observation, being this, monkish character who's looking through the eyes of, a Buddha-like nature, just looking for natural, I see all these conflicts and struggles and difficulties going on. And one of the reasons for that is this idea that I am separate and unique. I'm not the same as other people. I am my own person. And it's interesting that I was really, I've always used two words, empath and on the opposite end, sociopath. But when I mentioned empath and I couldn't come up with the opposite word, Dee actually looked it up online in our last talk, and she came up with a whole bunch of words that are at the opposite end of empath. So quite often we think of an empath as somebody who's unique and special and gifted and all of that. But the true nature of being a human being is that we can tune in to the feelings of others. We can feel them as if they were ourselves. And every body can do that. It's just that in this construct of separation, we've forgotten who we naturally are as an animal. So we're no longer as able to tune into that. And the few people who can, and they can't get out of it, no matter how separated the world around them is, oftentimes they struggle with being around other people because the other people are mostly in their mind and they're more of a thinking creature and a constructed, person. So it can be overwhelming for somebody who their natural tendency is empath, but it's some of the words that you came up with were actually surprising to me, because the only one I've ever used is sociopath.
It's
And
a
just so you,
narcissist. Yeah.
narcissist, yeah, that was the other one. There was a bunch of them. Even psychopath was in there. So if these are the things that happen when you're separated and when you're strongly individualistic, then I would strongly ask, why would you want that? Why would you not want to learn more about who you are as an animal and what is natural to you? And when you learn those things, a lot of the so-called problems that show up when you're divided are just non-existent. They're not there anymore. You don't have this idea of complaining and blaming and judging and arguing and conflicting, and all that stuff just isn't there. So if somebody has an opinion and they're 180 degrees different than yours, you just go, okay, that's yours, this is mine. What else can we talk about? And it's easy. You don't want to prove that you're right or they're wrong. And the other thing that shows up is you no longer have opinions, but a sense of knowing starts to come in. And that knowing is in alignment with natural laws. And that is powerful because from there, you don't want to argue, complain, or force this on anyone, but you live it. And so anyone you come in contact with, it kind of rubs off on them. And, so that becomes a better way of becoming the same as instead of different all the time.
But here's the thing: not everybody have the opportunity to do what you did, right? Like, you don't have
True.
kids, right?
No.
Yeah. So, that is an interesting thing. And based on my experience of going on the Vipassana, it was integration, right? Like just coming back to my real life, right? Which involved my kids, involved relationship with my environment and work and people and clients, and
Yeah.
and being out there, because that's part of the way how I get myself known is by being out there through networking, or
Yeah.
doing these interviews with people like you and stuff like that. So it was very, very hard to integrate. And
Yes.
to a point that I think even 10 days of Vipassana, I would think that it would be for me about a month that I will need to take to start reintegrating slowly, little bits at a time.
Yeah.
And but that's really hard. Not everybody can even take 10 days off. I can arrange my schedule, and I can plan, and I can do that easily, right? When I plan in like accordingly to what I want to do. However, it's not the case for everybody, especially people that have full-time jobs. Like if you tell them,
Yes.
like, you know what, I'm gonna take 10 days of Vipassana, but don't take it from my holidays, because this is not a holiday. This is a retreat. Like, can you imagine if you say that to your
Yeah.
employers? They're gonna say, like, what the fuck, right?
Yes.
And but how can we do all these things from everything that you learn? Because hold on, just want to back off a little bit, because you mentioned that it is about the concept of this being like a monk. It is being alone and in silence, okay? And that what allows you to develop during that time. And I'm sure you were working on that before, probably. So, so that being said, you are already disconnecting from the tribal concept, but I'm not sure.
Yes.
It's what it comes to my mind. So
Well,
you start
so the
yep.
idea of the ones who are inclined to be that way are more of the hermit style of human being. And so in the tribe, you would always have certain number of people who don't resonate with being included, involved 100% with all the doings of the tribe. And for those people, they want them to either be travelers, adventurers, hunters, explorers, or shamans, or just the old man that lives out in the forest, or something like that. Because the tribe, the group, the collective needs to go to see that old man out in the forest every now and then to resolve things that are going on with them, because there's so much in the doing of things, and that person is not designed that way. So for him to be involved all the time with all the doings, it's just not, it's not his nature or her nature. It could be him or her. So there's a need for an understanding of what is the hermit, or what is the loner, or what is the recluse, or all these things, or the introvert, and how to make good use of that if you're not that style, which the majority of people are not, But that being said, within the tribe, there is all kinds of, when you look at tribal living of our ancestors, there's all kinds of methods that were used where everyone had to go through initiations where they experience what that person lives. So they would go on a vision quest. They would go, some of them are quite extreme. Like my favorite one is where they bury you in the sand 3 feet under the ground for 3 days with no food and water. and all you have is a pipe with air up to the surface, and you come out of that reborn, rebirthed. You go into this emptiness. You might go through a struggle or a panic at first, but what are you going to do? All you have available is breathing, and darkness, and you're stuck there. So there's all kinds of things like that. And the vision quest is one where the tribal, and this is Cree and Ojibwe, like North American, where the tribal member goes out into the forest with nothing but a blanket and some wood and a fire, and they sit beside a tree for 3 days with no food and water again, and they don't move, and day and night they're there, and they come back. Either the animals eat them, so if they're not in sync with nature and they're not tuned into what the tribe is all about and the life cycles, life and death cycles and all of that, then it could be that the carnivores find them, and that's that tribal member didn't make it. If they come back, though, it means they were in tune with the spirits of the forest. They were in tune with the shaman who's working with them back at the tribe, or the group of elders, or whoever's doing, because there's ceremonies going on for them back at the tribe as well. Everyone's working together. It's not just one person goes into the forest and good luck to you. We'll see you in 3 days if you make it, right?
Yeah, totally. And that's and I think that's what we're missing,
Yes.
right, today,
One of the
because
things.
totally.
Yeah.
But definitely it is that support, right? Because I
Yeah.
will give you an example of
Well,
for
two
it.
things. There's two
Okay.
things in that, right? There's the support, but there's that ceremony of going off on your own into silence, the retreat. So the other
But you
thing we're
still
missing
know
is
that you're
the
not
opportunity.
alone. It is, yeah, but you still know that you're not alone. You still have,
Yes.
you still have to go through your own thing, right?
Yeah.
However, it is part of a ritual, right?
Hmm.
That it's part of the tribe. You know you're gonna go through that, and in some ways you're expecting that. It's like in our back in the days, right? Not too long ago, you knew you were going to become an adult, get married, and have kids, right? It's not the case anymore. But that's kind of where a lot of us come from, right?
Well, the person like me is different, though. I knew from a very young age that I wasn't going to get married and I wasn't going to have kids. So there's a few individuals that are not designed for that, and they know it right from a very young age, and they don't follow the go along with what everyone else does, right?
Yeah, yeah. But it's part of it is part of the community, of the society, what
Yes.
is going to determine of what your
Yeah.
life is going to be, right?
Yes. Yes.
And however, of course, things have changed, and are becoming different. But even though that's still different, I still see that lack of support. And I will give an example that it's another cultural shock for me, right? Like when I got pregnant, my mom and my mother-in-law were like, "Oh my God, we're moving to Canada. You're gonna have a baby. We have to be there for the grandkid and all that stuff," right? That support, community, right? It is like, and that's exactly what ended up happening. Okay, my mom moved to Canada first, and then after my mother-in-law arrived to Canada, my mom got a job, and then my mother-in-law was taking care of the kids, because at that point my mother-in-law was retired already. My mom wasn't. My mom still have, and at that point my mom still have my brother, who was a teenager. So those are things that I see, right? I even think about, like whenever my kids have their kids, I will be there. I'm the grandmom. I have to be there, support them, help them, give them past all this, stories and stuff like that I got from my great grandmom and my grandma. I don't see that happening at all.
Yeah. It's been
And
ripped to pieces. When I moved out, my parents grew up in something closer to what you're talking about, but it was already, large pieces of that were already taken away from them when they first moved here, like the settlers of Canada, like my great grandparents, pioneers, they called them. So they were given the opportunity, because they didn't have much opportunity, in the United Kingdom where they came from. So they were given the opportunity to own as much land as royalty, like a section of land, 1 square mile of land. And that's a lot. That's like what a noble person would have in their home country. So they're a peasant and they're given this opportunity, and they're told all they have to do is they have to clear all the trees and rocks and start farming it. Well, they go there with nothing but their hands and feet and their, and their willingness, and that's it. And they have to start figuring out how to clear this land, and so from there, they had to function with the help of others, and they had to work together. And so they just kind of learned that, because as a peasant in their home country, the deconstructing of that was already thousands of years in the making. So the peasants had already been separated and divided and conquered, and we'll make you work long hours. We'll give you a little bit of money. You can buy a little bit of food, and maybe share a shelter, because you can't afford to have your own shelter, kind of thing, which is, again, a modern concept, is boxing people into houses that, like, it's a ridiculous thing. If you think about it just for a second, it's very absurd that you would have a huge house bigger than what you need. We all have this pretty much in Canada. Even a small apartment is bigger than what you need. You'd have this huge house. This shelter is what it is, a shelter from the elements. And you would spend 30 years of work to pay for that house. So even my grandparents, they would have a house building party, and all the neighbors from all around would come there. Like 100 people would be there. In 2 months, they would build a clay house. And I know it sounds like a clay house, but clay is used as the insulation and stuff like that in the walls, because they didn't have Home Depot back then. And so it was mostly coming from milled wood that they would get, and different people have different skills, and they would build a house in the summertime, and it was a gathering, and it was an offering to maybe a young couple that's starting out, who wants to start a family and help out on the farm, or get their own piece of the family property and start working it. And now, so their cost was similar to what you're talking about. Their cost was very low, but still the idea of they need their own house was there. The idea of you're grown up, now you leave the home.
But here's the thing with that concept, right? There is, the way how I see it, it is more like a tribe and everybody being interconnected. It's not the concept that we see right now of individuals.
Yes.
Or being individualistic. I don't see, that is a whole different concept, because even though that you still have your house for yourself or for your family, right? You still have that concept of support, of community, everybody helping each other. Like if we need to build another home for, the newcomer, we all go and do that. But that doesn't happen anymore. It is even a struggle to find somebody to help you move.
Yes.
Like, it is just because everybody's too busy. It's like, how come? Am I like, why you didn't give me enough time? Sometimes there's not enough time to give notice, right? So it's just life happens. And there's not that sense of support anymore. I don't see it. And it's really, really, really sad to see that, at least for me, right?
Yeah, and it's all about, there's a few basic things that all tribes had. And one of them is meditation in various different forms. So silence, aloneness, doing retreats and rituals that are similar to that, so that they can learn about the self, because there is obviously a body and a mind. And those two things need to become connected. So the natural animal has a mind and body, and they're very connected in the instinctive animal kingdom. And if we learn more about how those two connect, then we have more of a complete animal. That complete animal then does have requirements. And so, like yourself, when you go on something like a Vipassana and you deeply learn this, then you come out here and then you have to now shell up. You have to make yourself an individual again. It's like being ripped in half, and it's not supposed to be like that. This is supposed to be how we live every moment of every day. And so a certain amount of, like, when we talk about the monk, that's not actually alone. When the Buddha talked about three things, and these are three things that occur in nature. If you look deeply enough, you can find them. There's the Buddha, which is somebody who is 100% natural, enlightened, if you will. And that's the one that the monks all look to and go, that's what will happen if we practice being natural long enough to clean up and clear up all the individual stuff, the separated, divided, conquered version of ourselves, the self-made self. So what I think I am is what I am. If you just ask yourself the question, who am I? It's actually not answerable. If you say you're a healthcare worker, then I could go into that and ask you more questions to find out, no, that's not what you are either. And we could keep going and we'll never find the answer to that. So we also had this concept of no self, and that's what shows up. There is no self. And so when you meditate deeply enough and long enough, you start to discover that. So the triple gem is the Buddha, the Sangha, and the Dhamma. And the Dhamma basically just explains the way things are as they are in nature, right? So you practicing the Dhamma, you have a group of people, which in this case would be the monks, but that could be any group of people, that could be the tribe. So the tribe is in tune with nature. It follows along with the teachings of nature as it is, natural laws. And then they do that as a group together. And together they're able to understand that they're not separate individuals. Each of them functions in their role in that village, but the village is actually the animal that's living in nature. And then they have the individuals who they look to, like the elders and the shaman and the chief and different people who have achieved a very clear understanding of what natural is. So they're constantly looking to those individuals for guidance so that they could stay cohesive and safe and flourish within nature. So it's a triple gem. So you have the teachings of nature, the group who follows those teachings, and then the ones who have become fully natural that they look up to for guidance. And that's the natural way of things.
But here's the thing, I don't even know that is beautiful, and I'm all for it. Like personally, I understand the connection with nature and the power of being connected with nature, right? And but if we let's say take a 20-year-old or even somebody your age or my age, because like people still don't even know what you're talking about. It is like what the heck is that? What the heck is that? What are you talking? How is that possible? I'm living in my house, which is perfect. Meditation. Oh, I cannot meditate because I cannot stay quiet. I'm always thinking. Those are the things that I always hear from people, right?
Yeah.
And you know what? I'm always thinking as well. But the one thing that meditation taught me, it is to pick and choose. Like, is this really valuable? Do I really need to have that thought right now that I'm meditating? Not really. So, okay, I'll see you later. And let me do what I need to do. And there, of course, there are different methods and style of meditating that it can help. I found when I started meditating, for example, it was it was a Hindu teaching, and it was a lot of movement with our hands, right? And I don't really remember right now. I still have the instructions somewhere. So with our hands, we have to do this like 7 times, and then we just do this like 7 times, and then we have this thing that we put our hands on the top of our head, and you feel this cool air. Like, I have never done any of this crazy stuff before, and they tell me to do this crazy stuff, and the next thing is put your hand, and I literally feel the cool air coming out of my head. I'm like, that was cool, because I could feel it. So that is how I started meditating years ago. That was in 2009. right? So
Yeah.
I'm talking about a long, long time ago. But that was what it cut me into getting into showing up. It was a group class, not too far from where I live right now. And I was going every week, and it allows me to stay more connected with my body, right?
Yeah.
And then be more centered and be more calm and all that stuff. And they never told me stop thinking, right?
Yes.
Because it's the perception that a lot of people have. Meditating, just stop thinking. Like,
Yeah, it couldn't be farther from the truth. Like that, you cannot get the brain to stop thinking. And especially if you're trying to get it to stop thinking, even less of a chance. But so there's meditation, which is the practice, and there's all kinds of practices being called meditation, but usually they're in preparation for the meditative state. So the practice itself, in and of itself, is not meditation. So the state of meditation is pretty much where the mind and body are unified, and there's a clear knowingness that you're not separate, that you're a part of all
and
things.
and even talking about taboo stuff, it just came to my mind. There is this guy that I know. He's in Costa Rica. I don't know him person to person. We have met through this group, and I also have a Spanish show with two other guys on Sundays. And I said, why don't you come and be our guest and talk about what you do? So when we were having the conversation with him, he's few years older than me, and at the age of 6 or 7, his mom started teaching him how to meditate. But here's what happened. The mom said to him, you cannot tell anybody that we're meditating. You cannot tell anybody what we're doing. And of course, can you imagine? Then your mom is teaching you something, and then you're so young, and then it's telling you already that you cannot share what you're doing, especially if you start feeling good, right? And if you like what you're doing. And then she said there are 2 reasons for that. One, they're gonna think you're crazy. 2, they're gonna think I'm crazy, and then they're gonna take you away from me. So imagine, right? When we're looking at taboo, something, and I know in some ways, even now, even though that it's more open and out there, even now, there's still a level of taboo around that, right? Because
Yeah.
it is even in your case, right? You decided to be alone and in silence, which I don't even know. I thought it was impossible until I did Vipassana, okay? I thought I will not be able to be in silence for 10 days. And
Yeah.
I did it. And that's the power of the mind. Because I said, I'm going to do this. Even my ex-husband, who talks even more than me, when I told him that he needed to keep the kid for a little bit longer, like in a specific setup, different than what we normally do, and they said, I'm going to do the silent retreat. And he goes, you are going to be in silence for 10 straight days? And he started laughing on my face.
So I just had a thought. The interview I want to see, the conversation I want to see with you is with your ex-husband, because if there's somebody who likes to talk more than you and the two of you come together, that would be fun to watch.
Oh yeah. Oh, believe me, totally. We're like, it will be more like, oh my God, I need to talk. You're not listening. Oh my God, you're not letting me speak. And well, that was the whole time, right? But
So yeah,
that's kind of
the idea of this taboo thing, it's an interesting word actually, because I guess I've never explored the root meaning of that word, but what we're really truly looking at, and this might rub some people the wrong way, is mass insanity. An animal that doesn't know what it is, that believes it's separate from nature, and it's walking around on 2 legs and it doesn't even know that it's an animal. This is insanity. An animal that has incessant, redundant, useless thoughts going on, and is running around trying to appease this master. Like, the brain is not the master. It's just an organ in the body. It has a function, but it's malfunctioning severely. It's full of scripts and plans and structures that are not even in like not, they're causing disease in the body, you know? And so what meditation is really useful for is to calm that down and to tune into something that's beyond the brain. And so I use the word brain when I speak of these things as the organ, the gray matter that's there. And I use the word mind to refer to this, the truth of how the brain should function. So the mind is bigger. And so when information comes into the brain, now if the brain is conditioned properly to be more natural, then it can hear this. And now it can choose action plans, and it can do what it does. It can formulate, it can organize, it can structure, it can choose an action into the world. But now it's fairly pure. So I like to call that an original thought. So that thought is coming from somewhere else, and it comes in. It's an inspired thought. So you could say that thought is coming from spirit. It's in spirit, inspired. And so when we develop to the place where we can use our brain in that way, then that's more now how ancient natural humans functioned. So they would often go on vision quests and do ceremonies so they could tune into something beyond themselves. Because the reality is, we believe this physical world is real, but it's actually not. So now this is getting wild, because if you look at the structure of an atom, and the Buddha called those kalapas, the Buddha discovered the atom 2,600 years ago through meditation practice. And I actually felt the tiniest particles in my body. And I could, when I was in that deeper state of consciousness, I could actually zoom in onto one little atom and watch it function. That's the power of, that's what's possible when the mind starts to empty down. You know?
Yes, and you know, you're saying something that is really interesting and it's very hard to believe, right? And
Yeah.
because of all the things that we have been taught, it's like there is more than what we see. There is more than what we experience to feel, like at the touch.
Yes,
Right?
our perceptions give us less than 1% of the whole electromagnetic spectrum. So less than 1% of what's actually going on is here in the physical world. And our five senses, there's actually six senses. The number six is not online because of the insanity. But when it calms down and when it becomes focused in the way that it's supposed to, when it tunes in, now that one comes online, and that's our sixth sense, and that's the mind, that's the brain, that's how it functions. It's a
And
sensory
you
organ.
totally, and
Yeah.
we can call it like intuition as well, right? Because
Yes.
it's something, it's something that we don't count,
Yeah.
and it's just interesting to think, even what you said about, you know, getting all into the smallest atom that we have in our body, or explore that you're not as one person, you're part of this whole universe that we cannot even see, because we can only see where we are right now. We know we're
Yeah.
part of this province. I am part of Calgary, you're part of, you know, Fort Saskatchewan. It's Fort Saskatchewan, yeah.
Yeah.
And you're part of that, and then this is part of Alberta, and then we're part of Canada. But can we see that? No, we cannot see it, and we still believe that that's okay, that we're part of all this whole thing. But when we say something that we're more than that, right, that is that level that we can all connect into differently, people will be like, Stan, you're crazy. And D is crazy that brought that guy to interview him because he's talking about nonsense.
So the interesting thing is that we have a belief, okay? The belief is based on our five senses. And the dominant sense is seeing. And we even have expressions that say seeing is believing. Well, guess what? It's not, you know, because I see the sun come up in the morning and I see the sun go down in the evening. So is that true? Knowing gives me more believing. So that's a perceived understanding, right? And knowing the truth the larger truth of that tells me something very different. It tells me the earth is spinning and the sun is not spinning. It's not moving around the sky. And so then we have now a larger belief, and now it's more a relative belief. So instead of a perceived understanding, we have a relative understanding. So I have actually a new belief. My new belief is that the earth spins. I can't even prove that, but it's a larger understanding. It's relative. They're relative to each other. So once we move on to the next stage of understanding, then we come out of the illusion of perception. And then if you go deeper into meditation, then you start to develop knowings that are beyond even relative understanding, because relative understanding still deals with the illusion of the physical world. And, we have all kinds of science now to back up these statements that are way older than the Buddha. There's many, many people long before the Buddha that understood this stuff. And so only a certain number of people in any given society are going to dive in so deeply that they understand how to look at the mechanics of an atom from their own mind. So that sounds a little far out there, but this stuff is easily there's a story about a Tibetan monk, and he got word that someone discovered the smallest particle in the United States. So he hurried as quickly as he could. He got support from the village and the elders and all that stuff. And he got himself to the United States as quickly as he could because he wanted to meet the new Buddha. Because the Buddha discovered the smallest particle 2,600 years ago. And he thought for sure, this is the new Buddha. The new Buddha, the Buddha has come back to us in another life, and somebody has become enlightened like the Buddha. And so he got there and he found this overweight, miserable old scientist man who eats donuts all day and just hates everything. But he had a really good, brilliant mind, he could think, but it was all with, microscopes and technology. And he viewed what they believed to be the smallest particle. And so he was really confused why this man was so miserable and in such a state of suffering. Because what I like about the Buddha, and there's all kinds of, so this might be taboo, but it's become a religion for many people, and a lot of people follow the Buddha as a worshiper, and it's a religion, he's like their God. But the Buddha, only taught a couple of very simple things, and he taught them for his entire life. He didn't change anything about it. All he taught was be aware of your breath coming in and going out, and notice the sensations in your body. And that's it. Nothing else. It's so surprising that people think that there's so much more that he taught. Now, what happens when you do that, as you know, when you breathe, it's called Anapana, awareness of the breath as it is, as it comes in and as it goes out. What happens with that as a focus? So anytime you meditate, there's usually a focus. There's a mantra, there's an object, there's something, right? So when the breath becomes the object of attention, then it's connected to the conscious and the subconscious mind. We can breathe without knowing it, or we can breathe and know we're breathing. Mm-hmm. So it starts to bring those two together. And then what shows up when you first start meditating is, this isn't working. My mind is wilder than it ever was before. But the truth is, your mind is always doing that, but you're only aware of the surface content. And underneath it, there's this huge iceberg, and you just know the little pokes that come through. So you deal with this little pokey thing, but it's this big actually, and you don't know that. So when you start to meditate, it all comes up and it merges together. So from there, you have to go through some rough spots. That's why the Buddha was so busy. He was dealing with all this difficulty that people are going through when they try his technique.
Thank you, Stan. So much to share, I gotta say. And I want to close with a few things as you were talking, and I'm taking notes here. And if there is, I'm gonna share the highlights for me. And it is, one thing for sure is tuning with nature. I think we don't do it enough. Okay. We have nature everywhere, right? Even if you are in the busiest city of New York, which I'm told that is not as busy anymore, you can still have the Central Park and go back and connect with nature, right? So
Yes.
that connection is not something that you really need to go too far to do that. So it is always there. And I like what the discovery of doing this kind of work that you have been talking about is the sense of knowing, and which is pretty much linked with, understanding the illusion of the physical world, and how it's how your perception changes, right? So I like that. And the other thing is the sense of belief on what we believe, right, and what we not. And you believe on what you see only. And I think it is, we're getting into time that we must. This is not a question of do you like to do it or not. We must open our mind and start being receptive to all these good teachings or good ways of living, because people have opened their minds to crap on TV, crap on the news, like negative vibe from the neighbor who is a grumpy person, or the co-worker who it's mad because he's unhappy in his marriage, right, or her marriage. And so those are the things that we really need. We're open up to all that crap, and then we're closed down to all these things that are really, really wonderful, and it can change your life to better. So let's open up your mind and explore all these things. I think that's the
So,
biggest deal today.
Dee, I want to insert one more thing here. The way to do that, because there's one more thing to the practice that the Buddha described. So when all this stuff, the crap comes up, you have to have a way of working with it. And that way
Yeah.
of working with it is three things that he uses: loving kindness, forgiveness, and gratitude.
Mm-hmm.
If you simply did any one of these three things, life starts to get better. So if instead of complaining, blaming, and grouchy and conflicting, if instead of that, you pick up your tea and you go, wow, this is so amazing. This tea got here to me somehow. Thousands of people were involved in creating this little tea bag for me to drink. And now it's nourishing my brain and whatever.
Totally,
That
totally.
changes everything about your life
It
right
does.
there.
It does. It does. And it's I put in practice those things, but there was this one particular time that I don't remember exactly when it was or what I was doing. And I truly, there was something that got into me that is so hard to explain, if anybody have felt this before. And then is when I said, wow, I'm so grateful for this person who was, she's my fitness mentor and stuff. But it came so deep that when I was like, oh my God, this is how it truly feels to be grateful for something or for someone, right? It's not just saying, oh, I'm grateful for this or that, and then it just go like, whoop, and that's it. It's like you're puking something. It is definitely, you really need to connect with that.
It's this
um,
deeper knowing that you were
yes,
feeling.
yes,
Yes.
exactly. So you really need to connect with that at a deeper level, and then is when I think everybody that is listening to this or watching it will understand one day what is this is all about. So for now, it seems to be a big taboo because it's only for crazy people like you and me, and the people that we have in common. But it is what it is, right? The whole idea of having these conversations is to bring this to light, help people to understand, as you were saying, and that's one of the things that you do. It is to help people to bring this to their normal life, like their day to day. And I think we need you big time.
Natural, natural, natural is the new normal.
Yeah, I know, I know. So
That's
thank
what
you,
we
Stan.
want.
Thank you very much. And when just share with us when you have a chance how we can connect with you, how people can learn all these techniques and this way of living that it can be integrated in normal life, right? So I'm looking forward to hear how people can connect with you in the near future, right?
Well,
Or
I can
now?
say right now, I can say
Okay, go
I'm
ahead. Go ahead.
deeply invested in helping people become as natural a human as they can in this crazy world that we have right now. I know how to stay in your house for 14 days easily and not leave your home and be happy the whole time. So I want to help people with that. There's so many people right now that are struggling with that, and they can reach out to me. My phone number I can leave with you is 780
Yeah.
933
Okay.
4271.
Okay.
And then, of course, my email, stanmaxwell@protonmail.com.
Awesome. I'm gonna share
Yeah.
that information in the description so people can get a hold of you and start connecting with all these different techniques and wonders that we can all implement in our life and make this, like, at the end of the day, for me it is to elevate the vibration of the planet, and but we
Yeah.
only do that one by one. Like, when we all start getting in tune with that, it's going to happen. It's the ripple effect. So that's where
Yes.
we are all at. And so thank you, Stan. Thank you very much. And please don't forget to connect with me on Facebook under Naked Fit as well, 100% health and fitness. And also you can find me under D Mago Happy Naked on Instagram and Facebook as well. So follow me, like, subscribe to the YouTube channel, get the notifications for new interviews, and let's stay connected, please. And the best way to do this, it is follow me, and I will be also sharing the upcoming webinar on February 3rd. It is at noon Mountain Time, and it's all about elevating our energy. But we first need to discover what are those energy suckers in your life. So that's what we're gonna talk about in the webinar. So thank you very much for staying tuned. And if you have any questions or comments, please put it in the comments, and we'll get back to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dee.